South Alabama throttles Southern Miss behind LaDainian Webb's 4-touchdown night. It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50-plus infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. We'll recap Tuesday's ball game for South Alabama, for Southern Miss, and then we'll look ahead a little bit at the JMU Marshall game. What can Marshall do to slow down JMU? If Curt Cignetti is suggesting it's a trap game, there's something to that. Okay, so I didn't think this game would be close. I think it started out as a 16.5-point favorite. By Monday, it was 17.5, and today it was 18.5. I did not bet it. Probably should, but that's easy to say now. It was all South Alabama from the get-go. Whatever was holding them up through the first 5 games of the season, except Oklahoma State, they have figured out. Now, the question is, and this has been posed a lot this year by me, probably on this podcast and on my radio show, is it South Alabama or is it the 2 teams that they've played? The last 2 teams that they've played are ULM and Southern Miss, which they have dominated. At one point in time, scoring 18 out of 20 possessions. Who's heard of such a thing? I know teams are there's some really good football teams out there, all right? And some really bad teams out there. But to score 9 out of 10 possessions against ULM, they weren't quite as efficient against Southern Miss because there was an interception at the end. So it's 9 out of 11 possessions. Goodness. So whatever was ailing South Alabama through the first 5 ball games, they seem to have figured out. All right. So they'll get a little time off before hosting the Cajuns, not this Saturday, obviously, but next Saturday. Cajuns get Georgia State this week. All right. Going over the ball game, LaDainian Webb, he showed out. I thought it may be a more Colin Lacey kind of night. It ends up being, he had a good game anyways, over 100 yards. He's second in the entire nation in reception, or in yardage, I should say. He's right behind Malik Neighbors. They didn't really go to him deep. They tried to hit him in the corner of the end zone one time, 25, 30 yards out. But Bradley could not find him, would have had to take a perfect throw. But overall, I mean, some of these numbers are outrageous. Carter Bradley, 20 of 27, 319 yards, did not throw a touchdown pass because the rushing scored 7 touchdowns. LaDainian Webb, 20 carries, 102 yards, 4 touchdowns. Kentrell Bullock, 9 carries, 58 yards, 1 touchdown. Dorian Smith, freshman walk-on, maybe a former teammate of Colin Lacey, I'm not sure, went to Faith Academy. And he had a touchdown. And Gio Lopez, the backup quarterback, technically the third-string quarterback, he had a rushing touchdown as well. He had another touchdown called back on a little bit, not lame hold, but a late hold when it was unnecessary to happen. So we're at Colin Lacey, 9 catches, 103 yards. Jamal Pritchett had a big ball game, 5 receptions. Colin Lacey had 9 receptions, 103 yards. Jamal Pritchett, 5 receptions, 122 yards. But it's not only as impressive as South Alabama is. Listen to these numbers. 640 yards total. 360 in the air, 287 on the ground. 34 first downs. I think the first 3 plays were all first downs. You know what? Let's check that out. Like, there was no answers for this to begin with. LaDainian Webb, rush, 9 yards. So second down. Carter Bradley, LaDainian Webb, that was a pass, 16 yards. Carter Bradley, pass complete to Colin Lacey, 12 yards. Carter Bradley, 10-yard pass to LaDainian Webb. So three of the first 4 plays were for first downs. And I don't know how many people are going to remember this, but Southern Miss actually got a stop on 3rd down, but they got a holding penalty against them. They could have forced a field goal to begin with, and all of a sudden, I'm not saying the game would have changed, but all of a sudden, South Alabama's gone down the entire field with very little resistance and can't punch it in. It would have been 3-0 instead of 7-0. Again, probably not that big of a deal. But South Alabama, again, this is what I expected them to look like. Not maybe this outstanding, but I mean, they are really good offensively, really good defensively. So we gave you the South Alabama numbers. Here are the Southern Miss numbers. 149 yards total offense. 46 yards passing, 103 yards rushing. They were 1 of 13 on 3rd downs. They only had 12 first downs. They were bad. In the first half, it's even more ridiculous. In the first half, 402 yards to 26. 22 first downs to 2. 50 plays to 19. That's ridiculous. Those numbers are ridiculous. And it should be mentioned, the Southern Miss defense, held up at the end. They at the end of the first half, I should say. South Alabama, it could have been worse points wise. It was 31-0 at half. The Jaguars had a 1st and goal on the 4 and couldn't punch it in. They ended up with a field goal because they got a penalty on 4th and 1. And then they started calling timeouts, and they got Diego Guajardo in position for a relatively easy field goal, and he pushed it, or maybe pulled it. He's lefty. He pulled it right. It very easily could have been a, let's see here, 38-0 halftime ball game. Instead, it was 31, even 34. So South Alabama's going to be able to rest up a little bit and get ready for the Cajuns. All right. They look as good as anybody, but the big question is, are they as good as we think they are, or was it the competition? I know it's not the same, but we can look at the Saints. Saints were really good against New England, but it looks like it was more New England than it was the Saints. All right, let's take a timeout. When we come back, we'll talk about what happens now for Southern Miss, because, halfway through the first quarter, it was like, we got issues. And they do. All right, so we do have, again, a double sponsor. Let's see here. The first one is Jase Medical. There we go. All right. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world today, and it's important to be prepared. Unrest in the Middle East, fires in Hawaii, hurricanes and tornadoes in Florida, earthquakes, and more. These can lead to supply chain shortages for medications or the inability to get medications in a timely manner. The Jase case is a personalized emergency medication kit that contains 5 essential antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. You can also customize your case and add additional life-saving medications based on your unique needs. Jase Medical now offers customizability for your Jase case with dozens of add-on medications. Choose the medications that best fit you and your family's unique needs. Jase is continually working to expand their medications offerings. In those recent efforts, they've added ivermectin as an option in the Jase case. Buy a gift card for family or your loved ones so they can get a new Jase case of their own. Go to jasecase.com and enter code LOCKEDON at checkout for $20 off discount on your order. That's promo code LOCKEDON at JASE Medical.com. All right. And now, stay with us. It's Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. It is FanDuel. There we go. Snap in action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. I know tonight's game or last night's game was college. I still should have taken it. Kind of saw that one coming. I don't see too many of them coming. I kind of saw that one coming. It's Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Well, now what for Southern Miss? Because Will Hall had this program going in the right direction. And I like Will Hall. I've known Will Hall for a long time. He's been very nice to me. Very generous with his time, whether it's on a phone call or on the podcast. So I like Will Hall. So if you think I'm biased, I'll admit that I am. But what do we do now? All right. So here is the problem when you have these guys like Kane Womack, who are doing it at South Alabama, Charles Huff at Marshall, John Sumrall at Troy. These guys have built programs really quickly. And Southern Miss appears to have taken a step back because they didn't get the quarterback right. That's what happened. That's what's happened here. Because they didn't get the quarterback right, they haven't been able to figure out anything else. You got to have a quarterback to complement Frank Gore, or you're going to have 15 guys in the box, so to speak. Or Frank Gore Jr., sorry. Who's still, really good, but there's only so much Frank Gore, superback, can do. And so what do we do now? Do you start all over again? Right? I mean, it was in a real bad spot when he got there. We made fun of him when he lost to South Alabama. It was actually Ken Womack's first ball game and Will Hall's first ball game. And it was a blowout in that one as well. But you had like Jake Bentley on that team. And you had Jalen Tolbert on that team. And you had Jalen Wayne on that team. The Jaguars had talent. Colin Lacey was on that team, in fact. It was only 3 years ago. And so there was some talent on the team. And Kane Womack addressed the issue, which was offensive line and running back. And now that is pretty taken care of. I'm not exactly sure what Will Hall had to address at that point in time, but he seemed to address it, right? They got better as 2021 went on. Got better as 2022 went on. Ends up in a bowl game. Ends up, they beat Rice in the Lending Tree Bowl in Mobile, no less. And so this season comes along, and forget about the Sun Belt for a minute. They had Florida State on the schedule. They've got Mississippi State on the schedule. And they have Tulane on the schedule. So South Alabama had Tulane on the schedule, lost. They get Central Michigan on the schedule. And who else does South Alabama have? Because was it a FCS squad? Oh, Southeastern. So that's a little bit different when it comes to strength of schedule. So Southern Miss could have been better, but have a worse record because you're behind the 8 ball with those 3 ball games. You got Alcorn State on there for a win, but now you got to win in the Sun Belt. And they just haven't done that, right? They have not been able to win in the Sun Belt. Let's see. if we can check out the scores here, because it's been brutal. There's no other way of, talking about it other than it's been bad. I don't think they played very well against Tulane. They gave up a bunch of points against Arkansas State. They scored 37, but their defense was a no-show. They fell behind Texas State 42-10 at half. Texas State tried to give them the ball game, fumbling and throwing interceptions. They still lost 50-36. They had all this opportunity. They worked their way back into the ball game. They were actually having the ball down 42-36 and could not get it done. And then they lay an egg against Old Dominion. That's the thing. You laid an egg at home against Old Dominion, 17-13. Defense shows up. Offense doesn't. Offense scores some 73 points against Arkansas State and Texas State and puts 13 on the board at home against Old Dominion. So now what do you got? You got South Alabama. They got destroyed by them. You got to go to lovely Boone, North Carolina to take care of App. You get ULM at home. Okay, so that could be a win, although they're a thorn in people's sides. You got the Cajuns. You're coming to Lafayette for that. And you got Mississippi State and Troy. So the last 3 ball games on your year are at the Cajuns, at Starkville, and hosting Troy, who's probably going to be playing for a Sun Belt championship or spot in the Sun Belt championship at that ball game. They're 1-6 now. Those have 3 losses written all over them. So, I presume something's going to happen here. Obviously, Southern Miss got a little bit of time off. Do you start again? Do you have a real reason on why this is going the way it's going? Is there talent? We can't see any talent around there if the quarterback can't get it done. And is it just the offensive line? And obviously the defense is in shambles. The defense was pretty good last year. Ask Carter Bradley. He knows what the defense was last year against Southern Miss. He took a shellacking in that game. All right. He put on 10 to 15 pounds. And yeah, maybe Western Kentucky had a little bit to do with that, but so did Southern Miss. It's not the same defense. So I'm sure the Southern Miss fans will start throwing out names. Who's going to be the hot, young assistant? Who's going to want to, you go get the Texas State offensive coordinator. Is that what we're going to do? Do you go get somebody from Troy, defensive coordinator? I would guess, I'll throw this name out there. I'm going to guess, with all due respect to Southern Miss, I don't think that Major Applewhite would take it, but you make a phone call, right? If he wants to be a head coach or not, you take the phone call. All right. That would certainly be on my list. If I'm thinking about hiring, you got to take guys from the successful programs. And, they've had, Jake Bentley was among the nation's active leading yards guy when he was playing. And they've had Carter Bradley, and he's played pretty well. All right. He hasn't quite taken, the last 2 ball games, he's taken the next step, but I was hoping he would do that early on in the season. All right. So we'll certainly talk more about that a little bit later on. Again, I'm hoping they don't make a change, not because I want to see Southern Miss lose, but because I think Will Hall will get this thing straightened out. I think he's a good football coach. I think he is. I think this is growing pains. Probably a lot of young guys that are playing maybe a little bit too early. All right. Holman Edwards came in and showed a little signs of life anyways. So, all right, let's take one more time out. When we come back, we'll talk a little JMU at Marshall, trap game or not, according to Kurt Signetti. All right. Time to tell you about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the price you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay guaranteed fit. Only available to U.S. customers. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Let's take a quick look-see again at the JMU Marshall ball game. It seems one team is going in one direction, and the other team is heading in the other direction. The one plus that the Marshall Thundering Herd have is that it is in Huntington. It's a short week. It is on Thursday. We'll stay up and watch. Well, it'll be interesting to stay up and watch that one. Mama Schultz is coming into town, so we got to figure that one out. Marshall 4-2, 1-1 in the Sun Belt, going up against James Madison 3-0 in the Sun Belt. And again, people are, they come down hard. And when I say people, I'm talking about like Thundering Herd fans. Cam Fancher was 27 of 34 for 301 yards and a touchdown. I know they had some issues getting it into the end zone. They, let's see here, they kicked a 21-yard field goal. That hurts. And maybe they got stopped in there as well. Rasheen Ali had a fumble. Again, this ball game changed because of a blocked kick. That's what happened there, right? Or not a block kick. That was the problem. It was a penalty that allowed Georgia State to keep possession, and then Darren Granger let him down for a touchdown. All right, let's see what happened last year. Last year, Marshall actually beats James Madison 26-12. Let's see here. Billy Atkins was the quarterback for JMU. That's the backup. So they didn't have their starting quarterback in there last year who was so good. Kalen Laybourne had 151 yards and a couple of touchdowns. Team stats are going to be obviously, let's see here. JMU only 247 yards to Marshall's 326. Do you go the other way if you're Marshall? Do you go, we got to keep up with them, right? You kind of know, like we're talking about the Saints on my radio show, and we know the Saints have offensive line issues. So you have to devise plays or a game plan that you're not doing deep drops, or at least let them think about it. I don't know what's happened to the screen passes in the Saints playbook. Maybe Drew Brees ripped it out on his way out the door. I don't know. Took it with him. But Marshall, knowing that their defense is not nearly as good, do you go up tempo? Do you, you got to put up a lot of points, right? Or do you do it the other way? And we've talked about this. You can go up tempo, but not go fast. Now, the problem with that is teams that are not disciplined can get a lot of penalties, right? If you don't substitute, they can't substitute. And you line up fast. And teams these days can line up in 5 seconds. And you just go in motion, and it's a bunch of nothing. It's a bunch of hocus pocus, and you take the play clock down to 2. So you've hurried up, but you really haven't done anything. So you can maybe slow things down and take the air out of the ball. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I'm going to take JMU. Again, it's a 3.5-point spread. Let's make sure that's still what it is. It is a 3.5-point spread. I'm done going against JMU. They're just too good. All right. Teams have had a chance to take them out, and they didn't. Whether it be Virginia in week 1, not a very good Virginia football team. Troy, Virginia week 2, Troy in week 3, Utah State in week 4. All those teams had chances to win those games. South Alabama really did not. South Alabama, no shot. And Georgia Southern was even worse. South Alabama had a small window at the end, but couldn't get it done. A very small window. So maybe JMU has figured these things out. Again, I'm going to take JMU until I see Marshall hold someone under 400 yards of offense. Or is Marshall going to try and put that on the board? Because they've that's the one thing. The offense has not been an issue in the last 3 ball games, right? Old Dominion, 464. That's a lot of yards for Marshall, right? They put up a bunch against NC State, but they couldn't stop NC State. They came up with 419 yards. They outgained NC State 401. And then last week against Georgia State, they put up 457 yards of offense. Unfortunately, Georgia State had 474 yards. Ouch. No. We'll see. I feel like this JMU Marshall game is not a turnover ball game compared to the Georgia State Cajuns game. I kind of feel like that's a turnover game. Like there's going to be a key turnover in the fourth quarter. Maybe it's early on. Maybe, it turns a 1 or 2 score game into a 3 score game. Can't come back from that. That kind of deal. But I feel like this Marshall JMU game is Marshall either has to take the air out of the ball to keep JMU's offense off the field or have to keep up with the offense, because I'm not so sure they're going to stop them at all. Right? If this game, oddly enough, is in the 20s, Marshall's got a shot. This thing starts going into the 30s and the 40s, Marshall's going to lose. That's what I think. All right. Good episode. Also, thanks so much for tuning in. Had a little bit of a funny moment on the radio show today. I came back from commercial and said, instead of my radio show and name of the station, I said Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. I'm like, hey, oh, dude, wrong show. Made it my daily promo for the overnight. All right, good show. We'll look ahead more to week 8. We can do a little bit more with JMU and Marshall for Thursday's episode, because they are playing Thursday night. Maybe we'll check in on what is going on there. Other than that, thank you so much for tuning in once again. South Alabama hammers Southern Miss 55-3. LaDainian Webb, 4 touchdowns. He now leads the Sun Belt with 12 rushing touchdowns, and Colin Lacey over 100 yards receiving. He's second in the nation, right behind LSU's Malik Neighbors. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please continue to, subscribe, share the posts. It's a big help. Audio podcasts, Apple Podcast, and Spotify. Just search Locked On Sunbelt. You'll find it. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review. It is a big help. We appreciate you so much. It's continuing to grow, and we're looking forward to hearing, hitting that magical 1,000 subscribers. Now we're looking at Thanksgiving, hopefully by Thanksgiving. All right. Again, thanks so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Dave Schultz, and you've been listening and watching Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day.